Welcome to Master the Game. I am Juce. This is Paula. And we are your connection to RPG a day. This is day 30. In case you didn't figure it out, the word is connection. So let's get started.
So I'm going to go first then.
I appreciate that.
I will take this for you.
All right, take it for the team.
Okay, so for me, connection, I was really thinking about, like, how are you connected to your character? You know, like, what inspires your character for you? Is there something that you sort of take out of, like, oh, my background, you know, as a kid, I remember this, or I've seen somebody kind of like this, and this person's inspired me. Like, how do you draw that kind of connection for your character? Like, for me, it's always something like, if I was a character, I would want to be this character. Or if I lived in the, you know, Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance or whatever type of, you know, scene you want to go for, I would want to be this character. Like, in a game coming up, I'm like, oh, I would think it's cool to play this pixie, which is...
She wants to feel very small.
No,
and not be able to lift anything. How is that different than real life? What? Come pick this up for me. It's too heavy. It's like 10 pounds.
I'm fragile.
Yeah, okay.
But part of that for me was from that of I don't know if they were D&D books or if they were like Dragonlance books as a kid, but there was a whole series that I read that was about, it was like there was this ranger and he had this little like pixie that came with him that accompanied him, and it would, like, the whole story was about these two kind of going through different, you know, scenes and scenarios and stuff like that. And I just fell in love with that character. Like, she was my favorite character, and it's been such a long time since I've played
from a book
a character like that, that it's like, oh gosh, I remember that as a kid. Like, it's very like nostalgic for me. And so that's how I connect to that character. That's why I want to play that character. But I feel like I have that with every character. Some sort of like connection to myself that I see in that character. And that's how I sort of like determine what I want to play, which is why I tend to play characters with sort of similar themes.
Sure. And
I don't, you know, I have a harder time connecting with like a half-orc fighter because I would never envision myself as that.
Well, when you were a kid, did you read stories about half-orc fighters or anything like that?
Yeah, but...
And you just never loved them, right?
Yeah, because
so there's your reason, probably.
I always like either the, you know, ironic character or the,
awkward,
you know, super smart character who ends up saving the day.
So, looking at the show Arrow or The Flash, she loves the character Barry from The Flash because he's awkward and smart. She loves Felicity Smoke from Arrow because she's smart and awkward. She loves the smart, awkward, ironic, funny people.
Yes, I do.
That's her type. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you know, you're talking about, like, these connections to, like, your childhood and reading books and things like that. And I think that's common, at least for me, because, again, I've talked about this before. Final Fantasy VII influenced the style of game I like. I was, like, 12 when I played it, 12 and 13, was obsessed. Maybe 11 through 13. So, like, 96 through 98, maybe. I think it was 97, 98. But anyways, so that kind of influenced the style of play I like. And the character was big sword, great sword, buster sword, you know, badass kind of thing. However, there are other games that shaped what I'm into as well. Legend of Zelda. Original Nintendo. My aunt used to come over and babysit me, and she used to play it all the time. Sword and shield character. He's an elf, but he goes through and stabs stuff, throws boomerangs, but he's mostly a melee fighter, right? He's got, like, some resources and gets creative about stuff in order to solve puzzles and things like that. That character influenced me a lot. You know, when I was a kid, I used to go outside and play with sticks and pretend they were swords or bow and arrows and pretend I was saving the princess. Like, that was what I liked to play, like by myself or with other people or whatever. And that influenced, I think, the interest in characters like that for me. Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I used to watch that when I was a kid on TV.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Big, strong dude with a big sword, you know, go and mesh stuff up.
That explains so much.
Yeah, these were the characters that I was drawn to. And then when you go to the store, you could buy like the little toys that were like this long and go and play with your little axe or your sword and shield. You know, think like what you can sometimes get at the dollar store around Halloween, for example.
Oh, okay.
Or like Caleb running around with the swords. That was totally me as a kid. All the time. You know? And a lot of times I'd be like, oh, that's like Link's weapon, you know, from Legend of Zelda. I want that. And then I'd get it because it was cheap. And I'd run around with it for a few days before I found a stick that was bigger and cooler. And then I'd play with that. So I think it's very common. I wasn't, like, for example, I like Harry Potter. I didn't get into Harry Potter until I was an adult. You know, so maybe that's why I'm not as into wizards, because there weren't a lot of magical characters when I was a kid that I was really drawn to.
Oh, really?
That I can think of. I didn't read like all the fantasy books.
Oh, okay.
I read books. I read sports books. I read, oh gosh, it's been so
More
long.
of like a Tom Clancy kind of.
No, because I'm not into shooting things too.
This is kind of random, but like, who's your favorite superhero?
Wolverine.
Oh, really?
From X-Men.
Oh,
I
okay.
was obsessed as a kid. But Batman's up there too, because Batman was probably the first superhero I liked. So
okay.
Batman, Wolverine, what do they both have?
That makes sense.
They're both kind of rough loner types. They're both, you know, able to handle their own, occasionally need some help. They occasionally get themselves in trouble because they're a little bit hard-headed and stubborn. Like, it totally fits now. As a kid, they were my favorites, though.
Huh, okay.
What about you?
So, interestingly enough...
Don't say Superman.
One of
I'll
my...
divorce you right now.
No, I mean, I did watch all the, like, Superman shows when I was a kid, right?
Sure.
But I actually, one of my favorites was always Storm from X-Men. Like, she was always very, like, composed and
she was
had
the backup
it together.
leader.
But at the end of the day, like, if something went wrong, like, that bitch could throw down. Like,
yeah.
You know, like, she was very, very powerful, but she always had it together, and she always kind of, like, kept her shit together.
There's an alternate timeline
cool.
where her and Wolverine end up together.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Aww.
There's a lot of storylines that so he has one where he was into this Japanese woman who then ends up being, like, mutated, and then they fight and they have a problem with each other. There's also, he was obsessed with Jean Grey.
You should be Wolverine, and I could be Storm, and then all the kids.
But I want, like, a movie quality level costume.
False. Okay. I was just thinking you could
I don't think I could do the Logan thing. Yeah, but I don't want to be Logan. I would want to be Wolverine. The yellow and black and blue one.
Yeah, okay, you were kind of going a little farther than I was. That's fine.
Connection. So for me, connection. I was going to say you know, because obviously you talked about that connection, which I thought was a good one, actually. Very, very good topic for you. So with D&D, one of the things I like about it is the connection to other players.
Okay.
You know, like, I've made a lot of friends over the years because of it. Like, you know, when we were playing with Dustin, now you're practically best friends with his wife, Nicole, who came over today, because of D&D. Like, that would have never happened if it wasn't for D&D. I met Nate, you know, from D&D. We became good friends with Matt from my old job because of D&D. Like, that probably wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for D&D. Well, and he was just a good guy, like, and was helpful. But, you know, a lot of it, I think, comes from D&D, like a lot of our friends. You know, my friend Jake, I'm now friends with Brian and doing stuff with this convention, all because of D&D. You know? So there's a lot of connections you can make just because of one single game. And I don't see that in other hobbies. It can happen. Like, you can connect with someone and bond over something, but it's rare, I feel like, that you become such good friends with people and spend time with so many people because of your love of movies. My point is, though, is that we've made great connections. I don't always get that from my other hobbies. Like, even I'll get it from like sports occasionally, but it's more of like a water cooler thing. Like you'll talk about it with someone. Maybe here and there someone will say, hey, I have an extra ticket. Do you want to go with me? Mm-hmm. But just because we like the same team doesn't always mean, you know, it's going to become like this lifelong friendship or anything like that. It's not as connected, I feel, you know, because it's also a shorter amount of time. There's less talking points, whereas in RPG you sit down for 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever. Then you also talk about it later. You might talk about other games, other situations, whatever. Mm-hmm. You know, so like you said, because you are forced in a lot of cases to be around each other if it's an in-person one. But I really, basically, I guess what I'm getting at is I just appreciate this hobby for so many things other than just playing a game, I guess.
Yeah.
You know? So it's been awesome. And, you know, like thinking back to it since we moved in together and you had D&D and I had the other games and like we realized we both were into that, had never discussed it at all before then, which was kind of weird. I think it's helped us too in a lot of ways. Because what would we do if we didn't have it together? It's like one of our few shared things, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, we're more of like an opposites attract type of couple, maybe.
Yeah.
Where we don't have a ton of like interests and hobbies.
Even the type of shows or movies are completely opposite.
Yeah, so having something that we do have common ground on is kind of different for us. But you're right, it probably is, you know, like what type, because it allows us to have friends that sort of overlap.
A little bit, yeah.
You know, because otherwise our friends don't really,
and
don't always overlap a ton.
Right.
To each other. Like, sometimes, but sometimes not.
Like, you know, with our children, too, it's something we're probably going to do with them all together as well. Mm-hmm. Like, our daughter has shown interest. That's why I'm going to be running the Essentials kit for her. My son, our 4-year-old son, has shown a lot of interest in playing with miniatures. He's into, like, fantasy fighting with swords and things like that.
He's into everything aggressive.
Yes, pretty much, but at the same... But,
he has so much energy.
But I've met... I have lots of friends, like Finch and things like that, who are into aggressive things, but they don't get into fantasy.
Into it.
Oh, yeah, Finch isn't into fantasy at all. He liked Skyrim, and because of Skyrim, he tried D&D with us.
Oh, okay.
He's not into fantasy. He doesn't like the Lord of the Rings movies or any of that stuff.
Really?
Yeah, neither did, James, I think, did. But, yeah, no, Ryan was not into it. He said he falls asleep every time. He gets bored really quick. It's not for him. So it's just different, you know. But our kids obviously like these things. And, you know, I think as they get older, it's something that's going to be like a family event. Like, I could totally see us getting something for the kids for Christmas in a couple years that's like D&D based. And then that night we're sitting down to play it on Christmas night or something.
That'd be cool.
I could totally see that. Like... You know, our 8-year-old's going to be really into it, I think, because she really loves reading. Like, passionately about reading. So, as long as you turn the TV off. Got to force the TV off on her, though.
And take the tablet away.
Yes, basically screen time you got to take away in order to push her to her more creative side. But she's...
That's a normal kid thing, though.
Yeah, she talks all the time about how creative, like, not how creative, how she wants to draw and be a famous painter and things like that. But then would rather watch TV instead. But she'll be the person, if she's serious about that could totally do our character drawings for us. That's what I'm hoping.
She's my child.
Yeah, 100%.
She's me.
Yes. And our 4-year-old is me.
So what's going to happen to the third one? We don't know.
Me. He's a boy. It'll be like me.
We'll see. Anyway.
But anyway, so that's kind of where I was going with the connection thing. I think, you know, as a family, we're able to connect around it, you know, especially with your brother and his wife. It's kind of been and sports for me with your brother. He likes football, so we connect a little there. But D&D is our bigger connection to them.
Yeah. And it actually, like, for my family, did a ton of good. So both of my parents were married before. Mm-hmm. And then when they got married, my dad had 2 kids, and
it's the Brady Bunch.
My mom had 3 kids. At some point, then of course they had me.
You're the only one by both of them.
Yes,
all
but
the
other 5 really struggled. Living together and getting along, and
well, they're very unique people.
Yeah, I mean, my oldest sister graduated and went to college pretty, soon after that, after they got married. But the other 4 actually started playing D&D. That's how I ended up getting into it. But that was kind of like their common ground. And it's very interesting now because they are all very different people, with very different like backgrounds and perspectives and
interests and hobbies. And
and even my brother-in-law found out like 4 years ago that his wife had played D&D.
He's
all
in IT,
these
by the
years,
way.
and like he didn't know. He was so shocked when he found out, just because of the type of person
he's an IT
is.
manager, but he's not like your typical IT guy. Like, he's a macho guy. He's a work on cars guy. Yeah. But his profession is an IT manager.
Yeah. Anyway, so but it was very like bonding for them too. So it's very well something that could be like that.
Except he always would joke and be like, "I would never play that, nerd."
Yeah.
But it's been something that, at least for her family, has done that. For my family, it caused rifts. My grandmother and grandfather were really big into church, and kind of pushed that on their kids a little bit. And when I was little, I was about 4 years old, my uncle had he was in the Navy. He had all of his D&D stuff over, and my mom had a nightmare while she was pregnant with my sister. And she ended up throwing all of the D&D stuff away, which I've talked about during this month. But that caused some problems there. And I think she actually got rid of a Hero Quest for me twice. I do have a copy of it now. It's the 3rd time I've owned it. But my mom threw it away twice on me. It was $20 at Toys R Us when I was a kid. My aunt bought it for me both times. But so it caused problems in my household. So anyway, so that was Connection. This was RPG a Day, day 29, 30.
30.
So we have one more left, and I can't wait to get to it. So this is Master of the Game. I'm Juce. This is Paula. Game on.